Guys, we're sitting here with Ralph Wolf and Tersh Blissett. Those of you who don't know Tersh, he's a company owner. He's a podcaster. He has many talents. We're going to get to Ralph first. Ralph, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Well, I don't know. My roof is full of leaves right now.
That's good. You kept it under the 10-second limit that we discussed. Thank you, Ralph.
You're welcome.
Tersh, how are you doing today?
Great.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your brand new podcast and then give us a little bit of background on just who you are?
Okay. The name of the podcast is Service Business Mastery, and it's focused on business owners, service managers, install managers, and service techs who are interested in the business side of things and maybe interested in starting their own business in the future. Or maybe they have a business now and they're struggling in certain areas, maybe how to grow a certain department. Not really a how-to guide, but hopefully my goal is to have some aha moments in there saying, oh, well, I've been doing all of this. And then you kind of mentioned that one thing and everything clicked as to why this isn't working for me. And so that's really my goal with the podcast there, help other people out.
What made you want to start podcasting in the first place?
I'm an extreme narcissist, and I just love hearing myself talk and other people talking about me. So I'm totally kidding. I actually don't like talking in front of anybody.
Well, we're going to let you roll with that as long as you wanted to go.
I know, right? You didn't stop me at all. You didn't try. No, I'm actually the exact opposite. I'm an extreme introvert, and it's actually weird because you're kind of hiding behind the microphone. I'm still getting my message out there, but I'm not standing in front of a crowd of 1,000 people, but then 1,000 people can hear exactly what I'm having to say. I was invited on to Brian Orr's podcast about a year ago. Pretty cool. I got a lot of feedback on, how did you actually make that work? Because I'm in the same situation, but it's not working for me. I found myself emailing and talking to a lot of people about different things, either on Facebook or wherever. And I talked to Brian about maybe working on something similar to that so that we can answer it all at one time instead of having a bunch of questions over and over again from people. That was about the same time that y'all were talking to Brian, and we got into the works of the Blue Collar Network. It wasn't something that I had some desire to talk to 20,000 people or anything like that. I honestly had no idea the backside of podcasting, the editing or anything to do with that kind of stuff. I'm having a good time learning it and learning how to edit it and the best way to interview people and everything like that. It's pretty cool. It's a challenge.
So let's rewind just a little bit. How'd you get into the business and how long have you been in it? And give us the backstory of Tersh.
Out of high school, I joined the military, and I was in the military for about 3 years. I was full-time, but I was in the Air National Guard. And as soon as I got done doing that, I went to work at a factory with my dad. It's a chemical plant here in Savannah. It's for International Paper's chemical division. I did that for less than a year, and I was like, oh no, got to find something else, because it was a 7-day swing shift. Just as soon as my body would get used to one shift, I'd go to another one, and it was horrible. My dad recommended I get into a trade of some sort. He was kind of pushing me towards electrical because one of his best friends, he was a licensed electrician. For some reason, the electrical side of things really didn't spark my interest, but I had a good friend of mine who was a car buddy of mine, and he worked for an AC company. And so I reached out to him about getting a job with him, and he got me an interview. The owner of the company hired me, and I guess the rest is history. I worked my way up through that company, left there, and eventually started my own company.
Now, I see you have a tattoo of a gear shifter on your hand. What's the idea behind that? Did you work in cars too?
I own cars, lots of them.
So you've actually driven so many cars, you have an imprint of the gear shift on your hand.
It's reversed, so it kind of burnt into my hand. So the first time that I had it tattooed on the palm of my hand, it wore off in about 3 weeks. And then the second time it wore off in about 6 months. And then after I think the fourth time of getting it done, it's stayed on there for about 8 years now, 8 or 9 years. But it's still wearing off. You can see it's got some imperfections in it, and it wears off a little bit. Yeah, I have a full sleeve with nothing but car parts also.
Yeah, I see a carburetor.
A turbo. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's all right.
That's how old Ralph is. He sees carburetors.
I see carburetors.
It's a turbo, but yeah.
That's an interesting point there. You got tattoos all the way up your arm. When you're hiring folks, is that a non-factor to you then? Because a lot of people see tattoos, they say, ooh, no.
Well, you point out an interesting fact. I hire on personality pretty much exclusively. Now, if you had a spider web across your face, it'd be a little bit more difficult.
That shows part of your personality, doesn't it?
It's really strong.
Yeah, but if you're applying for a sales position, you have to be able to make a first impression on the customer. I mean, there's only so many tattoo parlors we can sell to. I feel like if that's truly your personality, you wouldn't have it on your face anyways, because you have a salesman mentality and you know that you're going to have a difficult time selling to people. I hate to be shallow in any kind of way like that. If somebody has tattoos running up their neck, I'll definitely give them the benefit of the doubt if they just come into the interview and just blow me away, because they're going to do that to the customer also. And I have some customers who just really don't care about tattoos. Now, if you see me out in the field, I'll always have a white button-down shirt on. If you see any of my pictures anywhere, that's just kind of how I've trademark myself, is a white button-down shirt and blue jeans, or either white button-down shirt and khaki pants.
Now, you're in Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with the long sleeve shirt in the middle of summertime?
It's weird. I get asked that a lot, especially if I'm on a roof and I'm next to a service tech, or I'm next to like an inspector or something like that. They're like, man, how are you on this roof with a long sleeve shirt on? And I don't know. It doesn't bother me. Maybe because I've had my tattoos for about 10 years now. I got it right before my son was born. So I've always worn long sleeve shirts since then. And it does two things, though. It helps to keep the sun off of my skin also. And with it being white and it kind of reflect, the white roofs when you get up there and you have to put sunglasses on, I guess it has a similar effect to that. I find that I'm more hot if I pull my overshirt off and I have my undershirt on and I'm up there. I tend to sweat a lot more than even I would just with a long sleeve shirt on. And my long sleeve shirts are relatively thin also. I mean, they're not like some super thick.
Not like
shirt.
the Oxford
right, yeah,
twill
no,
thing.
If I was wearing something like that, I probably would die.
Wow, this reminds me of Mr. Rogers. Remember the show Mr. Rogers, Ralph?
Come in and change your sweater.
Yeah.
He has long sleeves. You know why he had long sleeves on? It's because of his tattoos from the war.
Really?
Absolutely. He was a sniper.
Didn't know that. Well, I knew he was a sniper. I just didn't put it together.
Tersh is basically like a
He's
sniper.
a sniper. He's a HVAC sniper.
He
He was
is.
actually a counter sniper, but yeah.
Well, there you go. Look at that.
Wow.
That must be
Mr.
some sort of
Rogers.
thing. The Mr. Rogers of HVAC.
There you go.
I bet the people will buy from him
man.
now.
Oh, jeez.
You're not talking to puppets in the background, are you?
We'll keep that to another episode.
Tersh and his closet full of puppets. I want to see your personality test.
What's your disc test tell us about you?
There you go.
Oh, my little light's going off because we're going sideways. All right, hold on a second.
Chasing a rabbit.
I will ask you one thing that's sort of related to that. You ask for video resumes, correct?
I do. Yep.
Why do you ask for video resumes?
I know the answer to this, and
Bro.
my thought on the video interview is the same reason I told you I did videos for my business, so people could see who was coming to their house, and you could see the mannerisms while they're being videoed.
One of the biggest reasons that I want video applications, and it's a video application, video resume. If you have this killer, stellar resume that you just spent 40 hours working on, or your wife just really knocked it out of the park when she redid it for you, and you want to send it over, I'll take it gladly. Video puts people out of their comfort zone, and you can rehearse over and over again. You can be really good at talking to me and face-to-face in my office after I've reviewed your resume and asked you to come in. Get somebody in front of a camera, get somebody in front of a microphone, and you can't hide so many things that you could hide in an interview, especially if you're a good interviewer.
Kind of puts them at a disadvantage.
What it does is it takes them out of their comfort zone. And if you're willing to get yourself out of the comfort zone so that you could apply for a job, then I know that you're willing to at least do things that I ask. Even if you don't agree with them 100%, you'll at least give some sort of feedback as to why you don't agree, or you'll put forth an effort to do it. I wouldn't dare ask anybody to do something they don't agree with. Sometimes our industry will say, well, that's how we've always done it. And if I hear any of my guys say that, I just want to I don't care if that's how we've always done it. I don't care if that's how it looked when you got there. You replaced the condensing unit, and the old condensing unit was at a 45-degree angle because it's vibrated and sunk into the ground, and then you left the new one that way because that's how it was when you got there. I just want people to get outside of the, well, that's how we've always done it mentality. And so everything's going digital. We're interviewing this on video. We can communicate digitally across the internet. Why do we still need a piece of paper that's going to be mailed in? I have to print it off and then read it out, when eventually it's going to be mainstream that people are going to do video. I mean, we may be 10 years in advance, but at least we're 10 years ahead of everybody else.
Is there anybody you've ever interviewed with the video that you would have not hired had it ever made a difference, where you say, I'm glad I saw this video because I would have never have done it had I
I've had
not
the
seen it?
reverse, where you see them and I'm glad I didn't, because the resume was really good. And then after seeing them on camera, you could just spot all kinds of personality cues that just were going to be black flags everywhere.
Plus, you get to see if they have the spider web across their face before they even come in.
Yeah, that too.
Or any gang indicator.
Tattoos is one thing, but what about the earrings with the big holes?
It's personality, honestly. I sound like a broken record, but your personality can make up for a lot of different things that I see as a negative or that anybody else might see as a negative. First impressions for customers are extremely important, but there's so many people out there that do it now. It's becoming more accepted in the general population, I feel like, in our area anyways. We have a college here called SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. If you're going to see somebody that's a trendsetter, it's probably going to be, or Seattle. Not uncommon to see that here around our area. So, like, if I was out in rural Georgia, maybe it would be like a culture shock to go into like these elderly people's houses and seeing somebody tattoos up their necks and huge gauged earrings. And I wouldn't allow like a nose piercing, like a bull ring hanging out their nose or anything like that. If the ears were hanging down to their shoulders, it looks like it's a piece of skin attached to the bottom of their ear rather than an actual hole. That may be something a little concerning. But also, if they have that, I feel like they may not enjoy our atmosphere as much as someone who kind of didn't have that same mindset. Yes, I want to use you as an employee, as a tool for the company, but I want you to grow as a person. And if I don't feel like you're going to grow in our company or fit well in our company so that you're growing, then out of my respect for you, I wouldn't hire you, even if you are a good technician. So it's a weird situation, but I have this one guy that's owner's son for another company. He applied. I like the guy. It's a weird dynamic because nobody will hire him at any other companies, but he can't get any experience at any other companies to see what it's like somewhere other than his dad's company because his dad is an owner. My goal is to make you a better person. My goal is to make you grow as an individual. Every week, I'm talking to thousands of people all over the world, giving them, just divulging them all kinds of information. But I won't hire somebody and do it one-on-one, and they could potentially earn me more money. What kind of sense does that make? So I could just hire them on as even an owner's apprentice. 10 years from now, he could go out and be an owner. If I taught him how to price things correctly, I taught him how to do it the right way, and taught him how to make sure he's adjusting for correct overhead, then I would gladly have him as a competitor versus somebody who has no clue what they're doing, charging $30 an hour to the customer because they're paying themselves $25. So they think that $10 an hour extra is just money in the bank, and they don't take into consideration the overhead expenses that are involved in running a business. So I would much rather have a fleet of apprentices that I'm teaching how to run a business, as long as they're paying attention and learning the things that I feel like are the right things to do to make a successful company.
We get a lot of questions about the cost of business ownership. Now, for your employees, is there a simple way you can quantify how much more an employee costs beyond his wage? I know it's a difficult question, but a lot of guys ask this question. I know the range is different logistically, depending on where you're at in business, what size business you have. But any word of advice for those people? Because that question comes out a ton on Facebook.
Are you wanting just the cost, or do you want the number that it has to be in order for the company to make money?
We want to make a lot of money here.
Most companies, they need to be operating at, it could range depending on where you're at, because my rent could be $500 a month for a small office complex, and it could be $8,000 a month in New York or somewhere else. Assuming that your rent's relatively low and your other expenses are being managed properly and well, and not like throwing 10% or 20% towards marketing expenses when you should be only spending 4% towards marketing, I would say you should probably be in the like $110 an hour range, $150 an hour range per hour for technician and all of their support staff. Depending on how well you run, how well of an oiled machine that you have as a business, you may have 8 service techs for one dispatcher, and it may be that you have 4 service techs for one dispatcher, and those operating expenses are going to be more because you have to have more dispatchers for the amount of service techs that you have. Their true operating expenses, I would say probably about $47 to $55 an hour just to cover the expense incurred by just that service tech. If you're getting paid $25 an hour, you have your overhead expenses. You had a company of 10 people and you divided the entire overhead expenses divided by 10. You just figured in your fuel expenses that you use on the average in a month. Your true operating expenses, for every hour you get paid, it costs the company, say, $47 to $55 an hour, something in that neighborhood. That number is going to range drastically depending on how well the company's run as well, too.
Ralph and I have single man companies we had for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph, I want to direct this question at you. What would you have guessed in relation to what he said? Would it be less or more?
I already knew what the cost was. I always tell people if you have a $25 hour employee, it's going to cost you about $40 an hour for that one guy.
That's a pretty safe operation. If you have competitively priced dispatching software, then it's going to be a lower number. If you have a dispatching software that has all the bells and whistles that really will help the company grow. You have 2 different types of companies, I feel like, or there's more than that, but I feel like it ranges. From one end of the range is a company who's super aggressive about growing, and then you have another company that is super complacent about what size they are. They have no intentions of growing. If you're super aggressive about growing, then your overhead expenses are going to be more because you're going to be closer to that 10% range on marketing. And then somebody who has no desire to grow may be at 0 or 1 or 2% of their yearly revenue generation in marketing expenses. If you're a $10 million a year company and you're doing 10% of that in marketing, you're spending a lot of money on marketing. Your fully loaded labor rate per technician is going to be a lot more than it would be if you're just in a company that you're just not going to grow very much. And both are good. Both have negatives. You're in a larger company that's really aggressive. Your expenses are going to be a lot more. So therefore, you're going to have to be on point selling things. When you're pricing out things, you may be more expensive than the next guy. The downside to the other size company that's smaller and complacent and they're happy with where they're at, you may be the only guy on call, or your workload may pick up drastically and you don't have enough employees to cover it because the employer has no intention of growing. So therefore they're not going to pick up another service tech that they're just going to lay off in 2 or 3 weeks or a month or 2. You may have to catch more work. It's a catch-22 depending on how you want to do it, which direction you want to go in.
Because that's always what I told my customers. I'll give you just as good a job as the big company. Mm-hmm. The only thing I can't give you is manpower.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's some people, that's exactly what they want.
That's where I want it to be.
How about now?
Well, now I don't want to be there at all. I'm happy where I'm at.
Let's not involve any of the stress it incurs to get the system to be a well-oiled machine. But if you own the company and it was pretty self-sufficient and you had, say, 4 service techs and 1 install crew. And
you mean if I could take off for a week at a time, anytime I wanted to?
Well, if your work schedule was a maximum of 2 days a week, the company only needed you 2 days a week.
I don't know if I would still do it because of the responsibility involved. Because all it would take is somebody catching a house on fire,
falling through a ceiling and getting
killed, all that other stuff. And that was one reason I wanted to stay where I was. I did not want to babysit somebody. I didn't want to have to feed them in the wintertime. I like to just do my own thing.
If somebody falls to the ceiling, Ralph wanted to be him, not one of his guys.
Exactly. That way I wouldn't be around to even worry about it.
He laying on the ground, they say, I'll pay for it. It's fine.
My luck, I would be the guy I talked about the other day that fell through the ceiling head first, 18 feet, and laid in a coma for 2 weeks.
And then you do wake up and have $800,000 worth of debt.
Exactly.
Just pull the plug. I don't want the debt.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm going to be working for the rest of my life for the hospital.
Oh, my God.
No, thank you. To answer your question, I don't know if I'd still want it. I just never wanted that responsibility. One thing that guys really don't think about when they go into business, they're not looking ahead in the future if they're starting off with the one truck company. Some of them are.
Some of them have dreams of grandeur. They are like, oh yeah, I want 60 trucks. And then after you get one truck, you're like, oh crap, I can't imagine having 2 trucks.
Yeah. Yeah. At what point does that company start running itself and not running you?
That is $1 million question. It depends on how well you set up policies and procedures and outlined it initially, I feel like. If you are good about setting up policies and procedures that are in place prior to you even needing them, then it's a lot easier to transition to that job. When you look at somebody's organizational chart, a true organizational chart, oh man, it'll be so intimidating because you could have 1,000 different job positions. You only have one employer, and that's you. So you can go ahead and fill out that organization chart and just put your name under all 500 of them or whatever it is. And then as you hire a person to do that role, well, here, I'm going to erase my name off that organization chart and I'm going to put your name right there. And by the way, here's the policies that are involved with that job, and just hand it to them. And then we can review it once or twice, but you have the book. You know how to do it. Go do it. If you have a question, you can call me, but I'm not the book. So if you ask me repeatedly things that are in the book, then we're going to have a conversation about how you can't read the book. That's how I feel like a well-oiled machine operates from the get-go. There's a lot of things that we do that we have no idea we do. And technicians are super guilty of that. They're like, I can't charge them that much because I rolled up in here, all I did was this, and they'll name off like 4 things. I said, yeah, but how'd you get to that result? How did you figure that out? Well, I took this apart and I jumped this out and I did that and I did this. And I was like, so you just added 6 things to the 5 things that you did. And then how did you get to that though? How'd you even know to jump that out? Well, just because I've been doing it for 15 years. You have 15 years of experience. You did 10 different steps and you're upset that you're charging them $125. You've devalued yourself. But as a business owner, we do that all the time. So we're doing everything as the business owner. We're one guy and doing service work or installs. And then you get into, now I have to teach somebody else how to do it. I don't know that I know how to do it, but you've been doing it all along. If you do something and you don't know what you're doing, you could make a note of that in the policies and procedures. Hey, let's research this when we hire somebody for this position. But you have to be very careful with that, because if you don't know how to do bookkeeping and you're continuing doing the bookkeeping, you're not going to be in business very long. That's something you need to figure out, either how to outsource it or you need to learn how to do bookkeeping. I don't want to do bookkeeping myself, so I don't want to learn how to do it. So that's something you're going to need to outsource. If you can't hire somebody in-house to do it and cover that $40,000 or $50,000 a year expenses whenever you're just one man, then you need to figure out how to outsource it. Because you're so small, I would expect that it should be a minimum charge through a remote bookkeeping service to do something like that. And then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about the policies and procedures of it. You're in your organization chart, you say X, Y, and Z outsourced company and take your name off the list.
If I can make a suggestion that anybody going into business for themselves, get themselves a payroll service, even if you're just paying yourself.
Yep. They take your taxes out. They can file your quarterly taxes. I mean, they can do all that stuff that you literally, if I had hair, I would lose it all from payroll services alone.
That would be number one advice I would give somebody.
It's one of the ways you go to jail as an owner. Don't pay your taxes.
That's scary stuff right there. I hated that part of the job. I really hated it. I was a technician that owned a company, and I know it. I wasn't a business owner.
Have you ever read E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber?
No, I've never read books.
Oh. Have you listened to it?
I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not a real book reader. If I ever read a book, it's like the one Ralph sent me, which was the Bosch instruction manual. I never read marketing books.
That's probably more difficult than E-Myth.
Yeah, well,
it depends on who's looking at the book. Sometimes, like I look at a business book and I see Greek, but I look at the Bosch manual and it's all laid out. It might be the reverse for somebody else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get it. Totally.
But that's one reason I wanted to bring you on here, is because of what you're doing for the business side of it.
My goal is to just educate as many people as I can on things so that I can increase my prices. Selfish.
You're being greedy, man.
I am. I just want everybody to raise their prices. No, I'm kidding.
How can we help?
Now, did you hear the couple podcasts ago where me and Zach were talking about the actual blue collar network? And I was talking about you, and I had said that you're bringing people in, and if you would just listen to the podcasts, all those tricks and tips that these guys are giving, if you listen to enough interviews, you can get a whole lecture.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Because they're pretty much saying all the same thing.
Yeah, you're right. They're very strategic about the information they'll give out, and my goal is to pull out more information. So
Yeah, but if you listen to enough of them,
I know
each one of them is they're gonna add into what the last one had said.
Yeah, yeah. Well, after you've accumulated 500 or 600 podcasts with all these people giving out that information, that's one of my goals, is to get enough information to share with other people. The thing about it is a lot of it's opinion too, and it may not be the same opinion for everybody that's in the same industry, like the coaching industries or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, but the base is the same though.
Yeah, you're right, and it is. But another thing, it may change in 4 or 5 years. So if you're listening to this podcast 10 years from now, don't take this advice. I enjoy it. That's my goal. I want to learn everything too. There's a lot of stuff that I want to learn from my personal company too. Like, I don't want to feel like a narcissist that knows everything. I don't want it to come across that way by any means. I make mistakes all the time, and that's how I learn. I regret not implementing a lot of the things that I even talk about now when I first started out, because I could have grown faster and done things better than what I even did had I implemented everything that I've implemented at this time.
Well, there's things now that I wish I would have done when I first went into business for myself. All little things. If I would have did them then, it would have been totally different for me now. But I was under that same impression, like you asked me, if I had a well-oiled machine, would I be willing to stay with it? The answer was no.
I was going to ask, you guys both mentioned things you would have done differently. What is an example of one of the things that you would have done differently?
I can give you a whole list of things that I would have done differently. Organizational chart. I would have broken down policies and procedures, everything that I was doing when I was the one guy in the truck. I would have taken networking a lot more serious to start off with and been more involved in the community. I would have created my brand a lot stronger right off the rip instead of waiting to try and figure out my brand. I would have just stopped what I was doing until I had a brand figured out, even if it was adjusted later. I just simply didn't have a brand, and that's what a lot of people do. They just go at it. Okay, I'm an awesome service tech. I know a lot about service industry, so I'm just going to go out and I'm going to fix people's air conditioning. And as long as I'm awesome at what I do, they're going to tell their friends about it, and they're going to tell their friends about it, and then I'm just going to grow up because I know I'm a way better service tech than the owner of the company I work for or all the other businesses. They employ nothing but a bunch of hacks. So therefore, I'm just going to blow everybody out the water because I know way more than they do. Well, what you don't realize is the business owners don't need to know a whole lot about the technical side of things to operate a good business. It's helpful if they do. It's really helpful if they do, if they have experience in the industry. You don't have to be a jam-up service tech in order to be a successful business owner.
Do you want to know something, Tersh? That statement you just made is absolutely 100% true, because the biggest companies around here are owned by the guy with a lot of money who has no experience.
On the technical side.
On the technical side. They know how to run a business. Do you know also that the best sales guy, AC sales guy, knows nothing about how an air conditioner works?
Because then they can sleep great at night.
Yep.
Not knowing they lied to somebody.
It's true, though. There's a guy here that works for one of the biggest companies. He's one of the top in the country, but has no HVAC experience other than selling.
It's not malicious. I don't feel like intentionally malicious, but if you don't know the product inside and out, sometimes it's a lot easier to sell it.
This video is brought to you by Parker Sporlan. Check out the Sporlan Zoom Lock and imagine a life without bracing. This video is brought to you in part by Ampro. Make sure to check out the new Ampro IRC-110 thermal imaging camera. Perfect for HVAC technicians in the field. Tersh, what is your company breakdown as far as employees? How many techs, how many salesmen, dispatch, on down the line?
Our salesmen, we have 0, and we have an air conditioning and a plumbing division. at TriStar. On the plumbing side, we have 6 technicians. We don't do any new construction on plumbing. They will do all of the service work. And then we got 2 guys that'll do water heater replacements if we do those, or like major repipes or something like that. And then we have...
I have to break in for just a moment because the podcast started to go sideways at this point. We started trying to name everybody in Tersh's company, break down their occupation, whether they be a plumbing installer, plumbing service tech, HVAC service tech, or HVAC installer. It became extremely confusing. There was a lot of math involved. We would all do the math problems and come up with 3 different answers. We can't air that because it makes us seem like fools. So we'll just say it in a playful manner to make it comedic. We're going to join back with the podcast, already in progress, at the end of that discussion. You know what, Tersh? I take this back, man. Don't worry about it.
Do you know the total number of people that work in your company?
Yeah, it's 15.
Okay, so yeah, 15. How many people are in the office?
3.
Including you?
I'm not part of the 15 either.
Okay.
Well, Excel, it has a math formula on it.
Do you have a general manager?
Mm-mm.
You're it.
Mm-hmm.
You have a girl that answers the phone, secretary.
CSR.
And a plumbing dispatcher.
Both are the same. They both work together.
Who's the third one?
I have 2 dispatchers that work together doing that. 1 CSR.
Do you have a note on the phone that says smile when you answer the phone?
No.
You should.
What is it, Burger King?
Yeah.
People can tell when they call if they're having a bad day.
Yeah, didn't you listen to my podcast with
I
Steve
did.
Kosha?
I did.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you if you had a note on the phone.
I listened to random phone calls. I had one person that if I was in the office, everything sounded great. But if I left the office, they were real short with people. And
That's terrible.
So back in the beginning of the podcast, we were talking about the way that I feel like any of the guys that are on my team, if they have an end goal in mind, especially if they tell me about it, then my goal is to work with them to get them to their end goal. Obviously, I expect them to be productive while they're on our team. This individual, that was always his end goal, to be a TM for Train. And so as soon as the opportunity arose, the leader of all of the TMs reached out to me and said, hey, this guy applied for the job. It's a no-go, then I definitely won't hire him or anything like that. And I was like, no, absolutely hire him. That's what he wants, and that's what I want for him. He had been on our team for 2 years, I believe. It came faster than I expected it to, but I'm glad it did come. It's great having him on the inside at Train. So that's one thing. It's what makes him happy. He's no longer on call. He no longer has to do all the stuff that a service tech does anymore. And he's doing exactly what he wanted to do. So I wish him the absolute very best. If you have that same mentality, that same thought process as the leader, and you don't have the boss mentality where, oh, great, now I have to fill your position in the job. If something were to happen at Train, I know he'd make a phone call right back to me and say, hey, things just really didn't work out. Can come back over here.
So when somebody comes to work for you and you ask them, what's your plans for the future? If they say, well, I eventually want to go to work at Train, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, and you hire them knowing that they're eventually going to leave. I guess nowadays it isn't like it used to be.
Why would I waste so much money on somebody that's just going to leave?
Exactly.
What happens if I don't spend a penny on them and they stay?
If you would like to download this podcast, go to the comment section of this video, go to the top to the pinned comment, and there will be a download link for any of you who wish to take it with you on your phone or mobile device.